would like to take this opportunity to introduce the featured speaker for this session, Farzana Rahman. She's the Vice President of ITCOL. She's been with ITCOL for 10 years. She came on board very soon after the solar home system was also introduced within ITCOL. She has been she's been very involved in the ITCOL solar home system, and currently she's moved on to work more in solar irrigation, solar mini-grid, biogas and biomass-based electricity projects. Without further ado, I request Mr. Rahman to come to the podium.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Farzana from ITCOL Bangladesh. So we have just been shown a detailed video on ITCOL solar home system program. So I'll just again explain the program modalities, financing structure, and other aspects of the program. And if time permits, I will briefly cover solar mini-grid program, another program intended to provide solar electrification in Bangladesh. Next slide. I can complete from here. So to start with solar home system program, the program started back in 2003 with the objective of commercializing the use of solar home system in Bangladesh. So the target of the program is to install 6 million systems by 2020. So far we have installed 4 million, covering 18 million people. That's 11% of the whole population. In terms of power generation, it's about 145 megawatt. The program is estimated to replace fossil fuel of 240,000 tons per year. And directly and indirectly, it has created job for 75,000 people. So far, we have invested about $625 million in the form of loan and grant by sourcing funds from different development partners like ADB, World Bank, IDB, ZICA, DFID, Sweetie SIDA, and others. This is the year-to-year installation status. So starting from 2003 till 2013, the program continued to grow rapidly and declined in recent years because of the grid expansion of the government and the introduction of parallel retail sectors, which was again one of the objectives of the program and a catalytic impact of the program intervention itself. This is the program structure. The program is mainly implemented by private sector organizations, mostly NGO and microfinance institutions. They are the ones who are responsible for identifying households, selling the systems either on cash or credit basis, collecting installments, and subsequently for providing after-sales services. So they're selected by an independent PO selection committee who select the POs based on some selection criteria and the demonstration that they will be able to operate the program according to some program directives. The partner organizations, they procure equipment from eligible suppliers who, along with their equipment, needed to be enlisted with the technical standard committee. This committee has representation for different prominent engineering universities, local government institutions, Ministry of Power, and others. And then there is an operations committee, which is consisting of PO representatives as well as ITCOL officials. And this committee is headed by the Chief Executive Officer of ITCOL. This committee sits once in a month to review the installation progress, collection efficiency of partner organizations. It also discusses about the day-to-day operational issues and other strategic issues faced by the program. And they also comes up with solution, and whatever solutions they provide, that's become binding on the partner organizations. And ITCOL provides all the financing supports and capacity development supports to the partner organizations and training supports to the households through partner organizations as well. And we receive funding support from the development partners, which makes this model work. This is the quality control mechanisms of the program, which happens to be one of the most success factor for being the program this successful. We have dedicated pool of technical inspectors who goes from household to household to check on if the installation and after-sales services are provided as intended. Then we have a dedicated pool of inspectors who checks on the collection efficiency status of partner organizations. And we regularly conduct technical and financial audit to ensure that the program quality is maintained. And as Peter said, we maintain a call center where household gets to lodge a complaint directly, which subsequently is followed by us with the POs that the remedial measures are undertaken. This is the financing structure of a solar home system. I'll just explain how it applies to a system. So a typical 20 watt peak system costs about $138. So we provide a buy-down grant which intends to reduce the system cost for the household. In this case, it's $20. This brings the system cost to the household to $118. Now the household is required to pay 15% of this amount in the form of down payment, and the remaining amount they are to be paid in monthly installments in remaining 3 years. So with a service charge interest rate of 16%, the monthly installment becomes about $4.5. It closely matches. It matches with the monthly connection expenses that they have to spend for their electrification purposes. Now, ITCOL provides refinancing support to the partner organizations amounting 70 to 80% of this amount. I mean, the loan that's provided to the households by the partner organizations. And the POs are required to be repaid it in 5 to 7 years with an interest rate of 6 to 9%. So you see there's a time differential between this and this which allows the POs to roll over the money at least once, if not twice. So as I said, the objective is to commercialize the use of solar home system. So the financial and subsidy supports we provide, it has a reduction pattern in phases. As you can see, the capital buy-down grant back in 2003, it was about $70 for all types of systems. Following a gradual reduction, it became $20 in now, and that's only for small systems, and because it's meant for the poorest section of the population. Similarly, we had this institutional development grant, which is meant for capacity development of partner organizations, and we continued this from 2003 to 2012, and now it's discontinued.
If you want to ask to see the laser pointer,
sorry.
Thank you very much.
Sorry. Okay. So, shall I start all over again?
No.
Okay. So similarly, the financing terms, it has started to become from concessionary to semi-commercial in nature. Now the interest rate, the tenors, we try to match it with the available commercial terms we have for similar types of programs from other sources. So these are the success factors at a glance that made the model this successful. We had result-based financing, which ensured that the financing is extended only after installation has taken place duly as intended. Then the phased-down nature of subsidy and the other financing ensured that the program remains on the path of commercialization, and the monitoring mechanisms ensured that the POs deliver on their intended services. And we've largely harnessed on the existing microfinance linkages of the partner organizations that ensured that provided us the access to the grassroots rural households. Then the financial contribution of all the parties ensured that everyone remains committed as intended, and the ownership model has created incentive for the household to maintain the system properly, since they will be owning the system after the loan is repaid. Then technical standardization, this turned out to be a great quality control tool, as Peter explained. And we are thankful to our local private sector for they were very dynamic to understand the market potential, and they have helped development of local support industries, and which has largely contributed to lower the system cost, which happens to be one of the lowest in the world. And government and the development partners ensured the continuous funding support for the program. Okay. Now the next program, Solar Mini Grid. In order to complement the government's vision to ensure electricity for all by 2021, ITCOL plans to install 50 solar mini grids by 2018 in areas where expansion of grid electricity will be challenging. And as per site selection criteria, to ensure that we do not interrupt or interfere with the government's plan of expansion of electricity, we consult with the ministry before we go for undertaking a project. And in order to make the initial investment justifiable, we ensured that there are a good concentration of customers with adequate willingness and capability to pay before we go for site selection for many projects. So far we have installed 7, finance installation of 7 projects, and have 11 to 12 more under construction and 20 more under pipeline. As for financing structure, we provide 50% of the project cost in the form of grant, 30% as loan, and remaining 20% is to be provided by the sponsor from their own sources. And the loan portion has an interest rate of 6% that is to be repaid in 10 years with a grace period of 2 years, during which only the interest is to be repaid. So this program is implemented following typical project finance mechanism, where the sponsor is to collect equipment and ensure installation, and following installation to operate and maintain the project by selling electricity to customers. We require the sponsor to retain a technical consultant so that they get technical supports during project development and construction stages. And it provides the financing supports in the form of grant and loan to the sponsors by arranging from the donors. In terms of challenges that we're currently facing, there are only a handful of technical experts providing technical supports to the sponsors. So we are gradually encouraging other engineering institutions to come into the sector for providing technical supports. And to mitigate the possibility of bid extension, we are regularly consulting with the ministry and the government. Recently, government formulated a policy under which government the promises to buy electricity from a project if grid reaches after there from the 5 years of project installation period. And in order to address the problem of installation and operation and maintenance, we are undertaking different capacity development initiatives. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Let me first start with Mr. Dharanagama. You come from the government, and the Sri Lankan government had initiated or had a goal to achieve 100% electrification. Of course, it's not possible unless you connect the last mile households. Government again introduced few schemes, one of which is Rural Household Connection Project, which was supported by ADB. If you can explain the project, the key elements, and how it has helped to achieve 100% or to in the future to achieve 100%, and what is the impact on rural women because of that project?
Thank you, Rajesh. So under the Rural Household Connection Project, we have established a Rural Electrification Fund. This was set up to provide credit facilities to low-income households, basically to get the electricity service connection and to meet the cost of internal wiring. So the unique feature of this credit facility is it is managed by the utility itself, the Ceylon Electricity Board, and this was established with the financial support from the Asian Development Bank with $4.6 million US. So the main characteristics of the fund, the maximum loan amount is 40,000 rupees. It is roughly equivalent to 285 US, which includes the service connection fee, that is about 60% of the loan, and the balance is for house value. And the interest rate is 7%, and the loan period is 72 months or 6 years. So we have considered many factors during structuring of the loan, mainly the adequate credit for the beneficiary to get the service connection as well as internal house wiring, and then keep the monthly repayment installment as low as possible, that is to ensure more reach and comfort to the low-income households. So that's why we try to limit the interest rate at 7 and also a longer repayment period, 72 months. And then the convenience to the beneficiary, both obtaining the loan and also the repayment. Now, the utility basically handles the loan approvals, arranging the electrician for house wiring, providing service connection, and recovery. So the consumer has to just to apply for the service connection, and everything is handled by the utility. So the fund is managed by a special unit established within the utility, called Project Implementation and Management Unit, and under the supervision of a board of directors represented by the Minister of Power and Energy, Minister of Finance and Planning, the Central Bank of Ceylon, and the Ceylon Electricity Board itself. So initially, actually, when we proposed this to the utility, their response was negative. They were a little reluctant to undertake because they said our core business is providing the electricity, not managing the credit lines. Their concerns are reasonable. One concern was that who will bear the cost of defaulters, the loss due to the defaulters. And second one is this is an additional work to their staff. So the managing loan, the filling the forms and all that. So to resolve those two issues, actually we got the loan from the EDB, and this loan was provided to the CB as a grant by the government, and that 7% is basically to cover the operational cost and cost of loss of any defaulters due to the non-payment. And to make their life easy, we have introduced a web-based monitoring and evaluation system. So once the household applied for a loan, applied the loan at the nearest consumer service center, and they enter all the information into the system. So the area engineer will get information from the consumer service center. He just click the button and approve the loan. So that goes to the project implementation unit where they release the funds. It comes back to the respective area, and then they provide the service connection. And then automatically, once they provide the connection, they inform the billing section to start the recovery of the loan. So we made it as simple as possible. So minimum paperwork, and actually generally the CBs, they can process the loan and provide the service connection within a week. Basically. And actually we have already reached the grid almost every corners of the country, and 98.5% of the households in the country are enjoying the grid-connected electricity. And our estimate shows that about 200,000 households have access to the electricity, but they cannot afford the service connection cost. So that's why we have established this. So this loan is fully disbursed now, close to $6 million with 32,000 beneficiaries. And we have expanded this facility with 2 other loans in 2 tranches, which is about 7 billion rupees, roughly equivalent to 50 million. So the first tranche has already disbursed with 110,000 beneficiaries, and now the second tranche is in progress. So the benefits to the women, actually, I think we have discussed many aspects, but I would like to highlight one thing, that is the reduction of deaths due to avoiding the unsafe kerosene lamps. So I have statistics from one of the provinces in the country, the Northwestern province, and 2009 deaths due to the kerosene accidents was 16. So out of these 16, 13 were women and 3 men. And the deaths for the last year, it's 2. So these figures actually include both accidents plus the suicide attempts. So the last year, the 2 deaths were basically suicide attempts. So there's a drastic reduction in accidents.
Terry's program on lighting a billion lives, which actually went beyond the energy sector, and everyone outside is aware of this program. What is the success behind the program, why it has gone outside the energy sector. What is the business model?
Thank you, Raniska. Yeah, thank you, Raniska. I'm still alive. Although I'm saying that because I had to board the flight, to leave my home at 3:30 in the morning today to catch the flight.
Thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, so coming back to the Lighting a Billion Lives program. In fact, yesterday we had the LABL convention, the first convention we organized all these years. In the last 8 years we've been working, but never organized a large-scale convention to really share the what we have done all these years. So yesterday it was there, and that's why I could not come here. So we initiated the program in 2007-8. We made a commitment to the Clinton Global Initiative that we are going to provide lighting to 1 million, will impact 1 million lives in 5 years, and that we achieved in 2030. Currently, if we have to just give a figure, then it's about 800,000 households we have reached, impacting about little less than 5 million lives of people. Now, of course, we reached quite a good number, and I think if I have to say about the business model and getting it right, I think the entire program is rests on 4 pillars. If I have to put it that way, very briefly. So one is, of course, we try to develop a pro-poor public-private partnership model. We all know about public-private partnership model, but the challenge to us was that how do you reach out to those poor population who may not have 2 meals a day. So can you provide a light and ask for some money from them? And if yes, then how much that should be? And that was a real challenge for us. So initially that's why we started, instead of a product sale model or something like that, instead of promoting that, we started with a fee for service model, whereby we put up solar charging stations, and the beneficiaries can come and take a lantern on rent, paying a very nominal fee. So in case they don't want to take the lanterns on rent, they are free to do that. So we never. So what we is that put up 50 lanterns in a village where maybe the number of households might be around 100, 150. So that there is always an inherent demand. At least 50 of the households will turn up on a given day and take the lantern. So there is always an inherent demand from them. And if somebody drops out, no issue. Next day, the person can come and take the lanterns when they have the money. And we experimented that model with a purely grant-based model. And thanks to ADB at that time, during the initial years, in 2008, ADB provided us some funding. That's about, if I remember correctly, it was about 40 lakhs in Indian rupees. And using that model, we thought that, let us also introduce a little different, try out the equity-based model. We have the money. In case somebody doesn't give us the money from the beneficiary, then at least the ADB grant is there to manage it. So we tried out a model which was grant and equity based, and in some cases it happened that of course the household started paying, but it was hardly 10% of the total cost, or maybe 500 rupees per lantern, whereas the cost of installation was 2,500 rupees at that time. So but still it was good that something was happening. And then we realized that, and all these things were being done through the second pillar, which was the fee for service model. So as I said, we were renting out these lanterns, and this fee for service model was taken forward with these village level entrepreneurs. Now they started earning money because of the initiative, and we thought that it would be good to ask some upfront equity from them also, and link them up with the banks, the local banks, to get some debt financing from the banks. And that's how we evolved the grant, equity and debt model. And depending on the socio-economic character of a given area, we kept it flexible. So somewhere it might be 70% grant, 20% equity, 10% loan. Somewhere it can be 50% debt, 20% equity, 30% grant, something like that. So we didn't fix it. Being a development organization, a social organization, we thought that it would always be good to keep it flexible. And I think that flexibility of the model worked. And that's how we reached out to so many numbers now. So the second pillar, I would say that we developed an incubated partnership. So we worked at different levels, whether it is at the macro level with with government like the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, who provided some subsidy to us under the National Solar Mission, or organization as I mentioned, ADB, or some of the bigger organizations who provided us fund for the grant, or the corporates who provided us fund under the CSR initiative. So we actually combined all those grant support to develop the model. The second level was the partner NGO with whom we worked at the meso level. It was not possible for TERI to go to remote villages and implement a model without the help of the local NGOs there, because they are the best who knows where to go, which village is unelectrified, whether its lanterns or the solar lighting solutions will have any preferred there or not. So all these things, this local NGOs started to do with us, and we trained them. They were not into this solar lighting sector. They were from different sectors, like some NGOs working in the watershed sector, NGOs working in the education sector, NGOs working in the nutrition sector. We trained them, we motivated them, and that's how they have taken the program to the last mile. And the third level of this partnership was at the village level, where the village energy entrepreneurs are developed. We consciously tried to develop women entrepreneurs because we felt that, and it was empirically proven also, that the social impacts, wherever there is a women entrepreneur, they try to rent out the lanterns to households where there is a children who are reading, wherever there are some social benefits. Whereas if there is a man entrepreneur, they would try to rent out to say shops and commercial organizations where they can also earn more money. Because a household will take a lantern at say maybe 5 cents, a shop will take at 20 cents. And of course the last model, as I said, the women was the focus. You might have seen we consciously designed our mascot as a woman, as a girl. It's called Laltini. When we launched the program, you might have seen the standee outside there. And taking this association with the women SHG groups forward, we launched a program with Bihar Rural Livelihood Development Society, whereby we provided 15,000 solar home lights to women self-help groups. Now the business model for this was developed in such a way that 40% we raised as grant and provided to them. 60% were financed by the women themselves. So these self-help groups are all brought under an umbrella called Jivika program by the Bihar government, and they provided what they call is energy security fund. Now this energy security fund, they can use it for any purpose, anything related to energy. And these women actually sat together and decided that we are going to take solar home lighting systems for us. And they manage the money. It's like the money is managed by the women for the women. We just provide the technical support. We linked them with the suppliers, and we provided that 40% grant support. And that's how we installed 15,000 systems are up and running in the last 2 years. This year we plan to take it forward and complete 25,000 systems. And yesterday, in the convention, after the convention, we had a meeting with this Jivika program, and they are very much willing to take it forward to 100,000 households in the next 2 years. And we are very hopeful that we can do it. So that's a model which is working. That's a model we feel that where the women are the direct beneficiaries of the program. And since they are taking the decisions for this, so it's working. I think I can come back later on in case there are some more questions.
To Aniruddha. Now, ADB mainly are these inclusive solutions. Public sector has a focus on inclusive solutions. But the private sector department, how do you see and how you can contribute? And what are the examples that you have seen? And also, if I combine another question, there are private sector institutions who are actually championed in social inclusive solutions as well as gender inclusive solutions. If you can provide your examples, experience, how the private sector can get involved in these social inclusive solutions.
Thanks, Ramishka. So at the outset, I would like to say that the private sector operations at ADB and the public sector operations, there are a lot of differences. But one of the main differences is the stage at which we get involved. my colleagues in the public sector get involved in a very early stage, like planning and design. They work with the governments, and therefore they are in a better position to incorporate elements in the project which are cater to include social inclusion as well as gender impacts. At our end, when we get involved in a project, the project design is almost done. I mean, we are at the financing stage. So in many cases, it is difficult to incorporate those elements at that stage in the project. But most of what we do is project financing for big infrastructure projects, like toll roads, IPPs, and so on. Now, in those cases, yesterday we talked about, Andrew was mentioning about the Himachal Pradesh example. And that is a very good example of how we can get even those big infrastructure projects to contribute to local community development through local area funds and so on. And that is some approach we welcome for our big infrastructure projects. But that's not what I would like to talk about today. What I would like to talk about is a recent initiative that we are doing at the private sector operations for sectors other than traditional infrastructure sectors. These are sectors like for energy access, for social sectors like education and healthcare. There, we understand that our big ticket approach, project finance approach doesn't really work. I mean, many of these sectors are they are very fragmented players in this. You need customized solutions. You cannot have a one approach fits all kind of strategy. So in these sectors, the approach that we have taken now is that we don't want to be the one to be prescriptive, to tell private parties what to do. What we are doing is we are looking at the market, we are studying all the business models that are there, and the goal is to develop a pipeline of private entrepreneurs who are actually solving those problems. So we think that in these sectors, perhaps it's not the government, it's not perhaps the multilaterals who have the right solutions. There are private companies who are already doing good things, but they need capital, they need scale. And so our approach has been to identify sustainable models in those areas. And there I would like to highlight two examples. One is this, and both are startup companies, and the investments that we did was small, but from our perspective, the development impact per dollar of ADB spent is actually higher in these projects than some of our big ticket projects. So the first example is of Simpa Networks. It's a company which sells solar home systems on a pay-as-you-go basis in Uttar Pradesh in India. And what they do is, a customer can pay 10 to 30% of the solar home system cost up front, and he gets it installed on his home, and then he pays the remaining on a pay-as-you-go basis using his mobile phone. So it's a payment mechanism which is similar to the way people in rural India nowadays charge their prepaid phones. So he buys credit for a month, the system unlocks, he gets a code via SMS on his mobile phone, and then he or she enters the code into the system and the system unlocks. If he doesn't pay, the system locks because there is a charge controller which prevents the battery from discharging. And it's a pay-as-you-go till you own the system. So normally after about 24 to 36 months, the system is fully paid and then the ownership is with the customer. Now, what is unique about this is, first of all, it's flexible. It addresses the affordability problem. Some months, he may not have enough money to pay, and therefore, he might be in the dark, but he still has the option to continue afterwards. And the second thing is that these systems are scalable. I mean, there was some discussion earlier about how the needs can change over time, and we've seen this in the field. Simpa sells systems which are very basic also, like they have just a panel and 2 LED lights. But then we have seen that once a customer gets this, their need goes up, and then somehow they say, okay, it would be good if I also have a fan. So now Simpa also has a system which has a DC fan. Now they are evolving to the next phase where they also have certain DC appliances, and we had this discussion earlier. So there is LG, for example, has developed a DC TV, which can be used in rural India, which can be directly powered. Now, this is still not, Simpa is not using that, but there are progresses made where the system can be scaled to different needs. So that's something. The second example which I wanted to talk about is we have this investment in a company which operates affordable preschools in rural India. It's a company called Hippocampus, and there, the company has made gender a core focus of its business strategy. It's not something superficial or something that because we told them to do it, they were doing it even before we came in. And that element is that they recruit women from villages, train them, and help them set up a preschool in their village. And that has solved a lot of problems plaguing that sector. Things like teacher retention, teacher loyalty, buy-in from local community. And therefore we see that, in our portfolio, the investments which have been most successful on social inclusion and gender inclusion have been those business models where gender is a core theme of the business strategy itself and not an add-on or a design element or a requirement that has been put there because of some donor. So those are the models which we find are doing really well. Now there's also something about which are the organizations which incorporate gender best, whether it's startups or whether it's established organizations. We've seen that in case of startups, it's easier to get them to be gender conscious and incorporate gender elements because it then gets incorporated in the very fabric of the company. In the case of Hippocampus, I'll give you this example. The organization is effectively run by women and women teachers. At one point, we got a suggestion from some of the women teachers that these books for children in Indian preschools, they have a lot of gender stereotypes. So when they are looking at, for example, professions on what children want to become, they'll show a police and it's a man, it's a policeman. They'll show an engineer, it's always a man. And so there was actually a suggestion which came from the teachers that we should change this. Now this would not have happened if the organization did not have a gender focus. So I think those organizations which have gender as a core business strategy, they are the most successful, I think.
You come from Sri Lanka, worked in Sri Lanka, and then moved to Central Asia prior to joining ADB. Now work in ADB, not in South Asia, but in Southeast Asia. With your experience, what's your understanding about the last mile paradox, a term which many of us use? If you can explain with your own experience, we heard that you have a project in Southeast Asia. If you can explain this term.
Good afternoon, everyone. Actually, our mission is to eradicate poverty in Asia Pacific. We development agencies have targets, governments have targets, and to achieve these targets, I tend to think that last mile is not a paradox, but a huge opportunity the power sector is having. Other sectors, compared to other sectors, power sector is uniquely positioned to reach that last mile and to improve the quality of lives through this going beyond the meter and providing this productive use of electricity and other educational programs for this deprived population. The population is still living without access to energy, are living in sparsely populated, remote and mountainous areas, poorest of poor living in these areas. In the region I'm working in Southeast Asia, especially this Greater Mekong sub-region, which covers Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam, and southern China, the bordering areas, in the mountainous areas, not only these poor and other disadvantaged people, but most of the population are ethnic minorities. Therefore, this is where the literacy is low. The women shouldering double burden or more burden, and the girl-child discrimination is happening. Therefore, I would say the last mile is an opportunity for power sector players. I'll wish to give an example of one of the projects we are doing in Vietnam to match the discussion going on financial models. One of the projects we are doing in Vietnam is we have selected 9 poorest provinces from north to south in Vietnam, and providing support to the government program in extending the grid, because Vietnam government wishes to extend the grid as much as possible. For us, the financiers, it's not always the economically viable. Therefore, we designed this project a little bit innovatively. We have a component for renewable energy integration, where there is a huge potential for small hydropower generation in the mountainous areas of Vietnam. So we extend the grid and we exploit the possibilities for developing small hydropower projects. These projects mostly now completed I'm talking about the loan component of the project actually, extension of the grid and developing the small hydropower plants. Already 5 power plants are under construction for a total installed capacity of 30 megawatts, which is a reasonable amount. And these two loan components complement each other, the grid extension and the renewable energy integration together makes the project technically and economically viable. We have another component in this project, two grant components. One is a subsidy we mobilized from several donors, and the fund is administered by ADB's multi-donor clean energy partnership facility. We provided $3 million grant to provide the service connections and house wiring for the poor, women-headed, and other deprived households in these project areas. We already provided 30,000 connections through this grant, and 20,000 more connections are to be done in the coming months. By the end of the year, it will be a total 50,000 households. Our estimate was $50 to $100 per household, and that is within that $3 million. And one of the key highlights of this grant is we used output-based aid mechanism to disperse the grant, which is we either utility or a private company or another local authority pre-finance and provide the service connections, and after independent verification, we disperse the grant to that entity. In this case, we selected the utility for providing these service connections because they know well the standards. So we have a several tools to ensure that they do a good job and the standards are met and the connections are sustainable. The other element, grant element in the project is the project has a associated TA, technical assistance. In that technical assistance, we have a small component to do livelihood enhancement programs. Unless we do these livelihood enhancement programs, the people living in these areas have low literacy, and they have their own cultural and social characteristics that impede realizing the full benefits of the project. Therefore, this livelihood program under the technical assistance is ongoing, and there are fortunately there are women and farmers unions in these areas which are very active. So in consultation with them and considering the unique nature of this population living in these areas, we are in the process of preparing a program. So with this,
we had a launch yesterday, and what fascinates me is the approach to your business model. If you can explain your approach to the business, as well as the challenges that you see if you want to scale it up, because at the moment you are only in Rajasthan. If you want to scale it up, the challenges that you see.
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Last speaker, so hopefully everyone can survive. Just quickly, I set up a last mile rural retail solution for solar and clean energy products in Rajasthan. Our approach to our business model, I think what makes us somewhat unique is that the way I started the company was about really looking at the end customer or the user. And I don't call them BOP households, I don't call them the rural poor, I call them customers for a reason, because we started looking at wanting to define them differently. So when we think about customers, I think about us sitting in this room and think about how we would deal with a new technology solution that we were never familiar with before. What would be some of the things that we'd want? We'd want full information about what this technology actually is. We want to know the trends as to where this is going to be relevant to us and how does it apply to us. We're going to want to know choices of all the different kinds of people that are making this technology and what's going to be best fitted for my needs. We're going to want to know pricing to make sure it's the most affordable and smartest pricing strategy possible for my pocket. And most importantly, we're going to want to trust it. Anytime we take on a new technology, none of us will ever buy something that we know is going to break in a month. Or we're going to be worried that the person that's selling to us is trying to fool us, right? So these are very typical things that if you and I would do this as a customer, what is our reason for not understanding that's exactly what a rural household would be considering when they're looking at a energy solution that they've never been approached with or familiar with, or have seen, and maybe it's not the best quality in the world because of other purposes or other reasons. So when we set up Frontier Markets, the whole goal was to respect rural households as a customer with this idea of then dealing with these 5 perspectives that a customer would have when it comes to technology solution. And so we started focusing on marketing our education campaigns on the ground, realizing that rural households are so used to their daily challenges of lack of electricity that they've forgotten that actually there's a right to get out of that. And now you can look at this as a social perspective, or you can look at this as a smart business opportunity. Sell someone what they need to hear so they would want to buy it. On a social perspective, you wanted to make sure that the product was as locally available to them as possible, because without it being in their reach, they're not going to be able to access it properly. Again, social perspective, making it easier for them. Business perspective, get a product close to someone's backyard so they can buy it. On a social perspective, it was about making sure that it is a quality product that can last longer so that the impact will also last longer. But again, on a business perspective, if you really want to treat your customer with respect and make sure they buy something from you again, it better be of good quality so you can build a brand identity. And then most importantly, after sales service was something that you can look at on a social perspective to make sure the product lasts as long as it should, so you're optimizing the impact on the electricity challenge. On a business perspective, if you're a good service provider, you have a good brand identity and people will then want to recommend you to others. No one wants to feel stupid for making a decision on a purchase. Everybody wants to feel like they were that smart first mover and they want to brag about the decision that they're making. So Frontier Markets' approach has always been looked at in 2 different ways. Are you a social impact NGO or are you a commercial business? And we just call ourselves being a smart business with a heart and really understanding that we're not trying to exploit that rural customer. Most recently in our retail distribution model, we worked with farmers that were retailers, we focused on after-sales service, we focused on engaging the end customer for insights and satisfaction, but we also realized that women played a very crucial role in this for a couple of reasons. So one is that they're 50% of your customer base, so you should probably bring in products that are relevant to them, otherwise you're missing a massive opportunity. But the second is that when it comes to empathy and emotions and awareness, women are actually much better at communicating that than men are. And so when you're wanting to do campaigns to effectively get a message across, really women are a much better vehicle. Thirdly, when it comes to customer service, we realized that men and women like complaining to women. So actually women got very good at not only listening to complaints, but were very effectively wanting to then try to solve the problem. So again, you can call it an impact story or you could call it smart business, right? It made sense to bring in women as a part of the model of what we were integrating. So, you know, our model has been working in India or in Rajasthan for 5 years. I always love this question of what are your challenges to scale? How do you go beyond Rajasthan? Just, you know, numbers is Rajasthan is 40 million households, which is massive. And so to even cover 10% of that would be larger than some of the largest scaled companies that we've ever talked about. And so the reality is that I could actually be successful at scale, not leaving the state, and actually being smarter when it comes to market shares, because then I really own my customer base well. I understand the product basket that needs to be introduced, and I have an asset that I've built on a commercial perspective. But on an impact perspective, we do believe that, you know, Rajasthan is not enough. And of course, scaling is the key. But what we're hoping to do is actually work with different partnership models to reach that scale and get beyond Rajasthan into other states. One last thing I'll say is that since we've all thematically been talking about financing, we've also been very, I guess, innovative, I think is the right word, in terms of financial tools, and also understanding sectoral challenges of bringing in different kind of capital in certain periods of time. I mean, you know, for India, the biggest challenge is bringing in foreign debt into any sort of social business or private structure, especially if you have foreign investors already. And so we had to be very innovative of looking at what kind of financial tool applies to us and when. So, you know, equity capital for sure, but how do you then look at convertible debt notes with different kind of interest structures, with different kind of term periods that you can use it as not quasi-equity, but quasi-debt, to be able to then address the challenges that we face with getting access to debt from local banks, and also the commercial rates that we cannot necessarily afford in terms of interest rates as startup or growth social businesses. And thirdly, also looking at where grant capital comes in. Interestingly, I really appreciated a lot of the speakers' ways of utilizing grant capital differently. So not everyone used it for one way or the other. And I think that we've been also experimenting with grants for training, R&D, innovation, but also looking at risk-taking for lending and subsidizing. And I think that, you know, as we start looking at scale, we'll only need to further innovate on the financial tools and then be able to use that to go further.
So let's move on to a case study, again in the same session, innovative finance in what it is. We have a case study from the Rajasthan Solar Park development project. So we have here Len George, energy specialist, South Asia Department, Asian Development Bank, who is based in New Delhi, India. And also we have Mr. R.K. Bandari, Director Technical, Rajasthan Renewable Energy Corporation Limited, we call it RREC India. And also we have two consultants who were involved in the project, Mr. Chandrasekhar Iyer, Managing Director, and also Anish Vijay. So let's move on to the presentation. First, Len George.
So what I'll do is I will quickly take you through the context of this particular project. Mr. Bandari will then get into the more specific details of what's happening in the solar parks. And then we have Chandrasekhar, who's going to present about some of the specific elements around inclusive solar parks that we're trying to develop here in Rajasthan. Again, just to set the context, Rajasthan is the largest state in India, and the reason we're supporting a lot of renewable energy here is visible on the map. You have on the left-hand side, essentially solar concentration. So this is solar irradiation figures. On the right-hand side, wind figures. So you see the state is richly endowed both in wind and solar resources. The Jawaharlal Nehru National Solar Mission that was being implemented, close to over 70% of the projects that got commissioned were in the state of Rajasthan in India. And the state today has over 1,280 megawatts of solar park capacity, which is the largest in India today. When this program was being discussed, this was somewhere in 2012. At that point, Rajasthan had less than 200 megawatts of solar and about 2,100 megawatts of wind. Today, that number, as we said, was 1,280 megawatts and close to 4,000 megawatts of wind. 1,280 megawatts of solar, 4,000 of wind. The state has set a very ambitious target of getting to 25,000 megawatts of solar in the next few years. And what they seem to favor is the solar park approach, which is largely in line with the way the Government of India is planning to roll out solar. The Government of India has scaled up its own ambition from about 20,000 megawatts by 2022 to 100,000 megawatts, which sounds huge, but one also needs to look at that in the context of the overall capacity that India will have in that time frame. RREC, of which Mr. Bhandari is the Director Technical, is the state nodal agency supporting solar parks in the state. They're responsible for facilitation of clearances, they're responsible for ensuring that the parks get built and that investors can come in. Well, there's a lot of stuff here on the slide, but essentially, when the Government of India planned to scale up to 100,000 megawatts of solar, they plan to put up about 25 odd very large solar parks called ultra mega solar parks, and these were defined as parks with capacities of 500 megawatts or more. Now, there are essentially three elements here in terms of what gets done on the infrastructure side. You have the solar park implementing agency, which is responsible for all the clearances and the permits, and also in some cases for building the common infrastructure, particularly the water, the sewerage lines, roads, and the internal transmission. Now, there are different business models here. The ones that we have been more familiar with, for example, in Gujarat, in Charanka, or in Rajasthan, in Badla, are the, they call them Mode 1, which is essentially a public sector route where the state agency does this. We're also seeing variants of that where the private sector comes in. So you have in one case a joint venture model where RREC is doing this with IL&FS. And separately, you have pure play private solar parks, where you're seeing some very large national and international players coming in to put up these parks in Rajasthan. From the Government of India side, there is support both in terms of the studies for the feasibility reports, as well as some grants for the infrastructure that needs to get built. So that's on the solar park itself. External transmission is still typically a public sector investment, and that's where you have the likes of the Asian Development Bank, you have the Clean Technology Fund, which is partnering us, as well as the Government of India National Clean Energy Fund, which is derived from a cess on coal. So this, in a sense, is helping support low-cost, long-tenor financing for transmission, which can then connect this to the grid. And then, of course, the solar park generation itself is largely private sector. And here, while initially, for example, in the state of Gujarat in about 2010, we started with essentially a feed-in tariff. We are now seeing aggressive bidding bringing down prices across several states. Okay, and this is essentially the program that we are supporting. This is a program that's, in a sense, focusing on the western part of Rajasthan, where we're helping with the transmission infrastructure. So there are long-term loans from ADB, as well as the Clean Technology Fund doing this. And then we have some grants, which are supporting in terms of the detailed design of the parks, integration of renewable energy, as well as institutional support and implementation of pilots and community activities. Just an example of the solar park in Badla. It's in 3 different phases. Phase 1 was tendered out somewhere in 2013. At that time, the tariffs they got were between 6 and 7 rupees, which is about 11 cents in today's terms. It was at that time the lowest tariff in India. Recently, in January, phase 2 was tendered out, and the tariffs that they received there were 4 rupees 34, which again are the lowest today in India. It's about 6 cents. What makes this happen? It's a combination of things. It's a combination of the fact that there is land available. This land is available cheap. You have areas where there is almost 300 to 330 days of cloud-free sunshine. And of course, the fact that you have agencies like ours coming in and helping put up a lot of the transmission infrastructure, because solar needs 12 months to come up, 50 megawatt or a 70 megawatt project. The challenge really is getting the transmission ready. So in a lot of these cases, what is happening is the government is working towards a plan where infrastructure comes up on the transmission side, and then they sequence the bidding on the solar so that you can essentially get output from the solar in time when the transmission is ready. So that's what's happening here in Badla. And then, of course, having a creditworthy entity like a central government entity purchasing power also helps to keep the costs low. Additional parks are planned in Jaisalmer, Bikaner, and Barmer. Now, these are some of the elements that the team will get into, but in terms of the inclusive approach, as you know, there are multiple models. So while in Badla, RREC is taking the lead in terms of undertaking some of the community work, they're also looking at, could there be overall guidelines that they could provide for other parks that come up in the state? So that's something that we're helping them on. Specifically in the case of Badla, there are some socioeconomic surveys in terms of identifying specific interventions that could be taken forward. We'll share some of that. From an electrification point of view, the state is doing well. They have a solar home lighting system program that's going great guns. There are also avenues for mini grids, and that's an area that I'll come to later if you get a chance. Livelihood development, again, I'll leave it to Chandrasekhar, but there have been some interesting elements around animal husbandry and crafts that seem to be of interest in this particular area. Thank you.
Good afternoon. RRECL is developing the solar park in Badla in public sector. RRECL subsidiary company, that is the Rajasthan Solar Park Development Company, which is the advantage. Now why the investors and solar power producers are coming to Rajasthan? What are the advantage of the Rajasthan for the solar power is the highest solar radiation in the country is available in the Rajasthan, that is 5.72 kilowatt hour per meter square per day. The vast tract of urban unused barren land in the desert of Rajasthan is available for developing the solar plants and solar power, which is the key requirement for the solar plants. The highest number of sunny days, non-cloudy days, is the 325 days from out of 365 in the Rajasthan are normally sunshine. Maximum solar power potential in the country, the total potential which is envisaged in the country is 748 gigawatt, out of which 142 gigawatt is available in the Rajasthan. The achievements of the Rajasthan at this time, in India there is a 5,775 megawatt solar power capacity installed in the India as a country whole, out of which about 23%, 1,283 megawatt is installed in the Rajasthan, and that is the in top of the country. The National Solar Mission, that target fixed was that 100 gigawatt, out of which 25%, that is 25 gigawatt has been targeted by the Rajasthan. There are different models of the development of solar parks which have been given guidelines in the solar policy of Rajasthan, are through RRECL itself, through SPVs and subsidiary companies, through JV companies, joint venture companies with the Rajasthan government, and the private solar park developers. The JV created for solar park in Rajasthan are Surya Urja Company of Rajasthan Limited, that is JV with the Rajasthan government, and ILFS for 5,000 megawatt capacity. And we said out of that 1,000 megawatt capacity solar park has already been approved by the MNRE in Badla phase 3rd. The second, that is the Badla phase 4, is the Adani Renewable Energy Park Rajasthan, and that have been allotted a 500 megawatt solar park, land for the 500 megawatt solar park, and one solar park that they have been approved by the MNRE in Jaisalmer district, that is Fatehgarh, is 1,500 megawatt. And one solar park of 750 megawatt is near Falodi and Pokhran, is developing by the SL Surya Urja Company, that is a JV company with Rajasthan government as well as SL Group. what are the responsibilities set by the state government and by JV partners. Those are also predefined. The facilitation in the identification of suitable government land for solar parks and the allotment of that land as state equity. In JV companies, Rajasthan government having a 50% state equity, which is in the form of the cost of that land provided by the government. Facilitation in the creation of evacuation network. The evacuation network, which is the part of either STU or CTU, which is the responsibility of providing by the state government. Assistance in facilitation in obtaining statutory clearances from other departments like environment, pollution, and many other kind of departments which are required for the clearances. The JV partners' responsibilities are development of solar park in time frame. Other facilities to be developed by the JVCR, water arrangement, approach roads, street lights, internal transmission systems from the power plant project to the pooling station. That pooling station has to be constructed by that JV company. And these projects are not treated as a commercial business projects. There are a maximum capping for the IRR, that is 16%. For benefit of that JV companies is that the state will have a control on the JV company for implementation of solar park, being a 50% partner in the company. The transparency in every aspect is the company is working just like a public sector company or government company and have to be follow the Transparency Act also, and that will be a transparent in all the process. Infrastructure cost of the solar parks projects can be optimized because the number of infrastructures like that pooling station, transmission system, evacuation system to the connected to the state transmission system or central transmission system will be utilizing as a common system for all the solar power producers. So that will be optimally that used or efficiently can be used. The faster execution of the project. If there will be a control of the government on the project will be move faster. Monitoring of progress of the solar parks can be done as being a partner or being the member of the board of directors of that company from the government sector. The Bhadla solar park that designed to reduce the cost of projects as all the facilities and other infrastructures commonly constructed by the solar park development company. Bhadla, that will be construction will be taken up by the RRCL itself. These are maps shows the different portion of the solar parks which we are developing. That light pink color is the solar park, the Bhadla solar park phase 2nd. That green is the Bhadla phase solar park 3rd. That is the joint venture company with ILFS, and the red is the solar park Bhadla phase 4th, that is developing by the Adani JV company, and that brownish color that shows is the Bhadla solar park phase 1 which has already been completed.
I'll try to quickly summarize what we are doing as a part of the consulting support provided by ADB. And I have to start by saying that the timing of this conference couldn't have been better because many of the activities are beginning to take shape in terms of the soft assistance to RREC, the state nodal agency. The location also couldn't have been better, this being in Rajasthan and the project being in Rajasthan. So thanks a lot to Francisco, Prabjot, Rehana and all team members from ADB. Quickly moving forward, there are certain key elements that typically follow an approach that is suggested by ADB. we look at what needs to be done to make the solar park efforts more inclusive, which includes community development, mini-grid development in the areas around the solar park, and livelihood development. There is also the fourth dimension of communication, which is all-encompassing. Everything that needs to be done has to have a proper communication approach. So that, in a sense, is also very much a part of the consultancy support. What I would like to say is that the previous phase of solar park development did not have any of these. And what we are doing now is sort of setting the tone for how a solar park development should happen. The right framework in terms of the approach to community development, the right framework to mini-grid development, and the right approach to the livelihoods development around a solar park is sort of, we are attempting to make a successful example of this, and hopefully we'll share that in the next conference. So many of the activities are in early stage. There's more to share in terms of what we plan to do rather than what we have done, and that includes assistance on developing mini-grids in the state, which includes the areas around the solar park as well as some of the other areas. Having had the technical support, we thought we should cover more, not just around the solar park, so some of the activities are focused on that. So a number of villages covering about several households around the solar park as well as other areas. I wouldn't go into too much of details here. This includes other areas where off-grid development is being supported, so the bid process related assistance is being provided under the consultancy. In terms of livelihood development, we started with a baseline social survey to understand the exact requirements, what the current situation is, and Anish has been leading that. About 400 households were surveyed, and to assess what kind of issues there are, what the literacy levels, the healthcare levels, and what needs to be done going forward. So that, and understanding what kind of partners are working in the area, interacting with them, and trying to see how we can leverage some of the ongoing efforts. So a lot of work in this area has already been initiated, and we are working towards a proper approach in that respect. And just a snapshot of the results of the social survey, the top 5 needs we tried to gather by interactions with everyone over there, with different set of stakeholders, including government, and not a surprise that education, healthcare, water figure in the topmost over there. Some of the activities which have already been initiated in terms of identifying what sort of livelihoods can be taken forward, how we can focus on some of the key areas, and what will work in these areas. So goat cluster development is one example, artisan cluster development is another. And what we felt was that in terms of institutional framework, if we have an NGO to support the implementation activities, it will help accelerate and it will help sustain what is being attempted there. So again, I don't have much to share in terms of what is actually done, but the approach and the planning that goes into that. We've also developed a community policy on how to utilize the development fee that is being collected from the solar park investors, what kind of CSR initiatives can be undertaken there. So beginning from prioritization of the requirements to channelizing the funds, the institutional structure for implementing, and a policy has already been developed and adopted by RREC. I'm happy to share that the draft policy that was shared was accepted in toto without any changes. That shows the level of commitment of RREC. So indeed, going forward, we do expect very active support from RREC and other stakeholders. We are taking this forward in terms of identifying the specific action plan. Unless we define activities in a time-bound manner and in a focused manner, we won't be able to achieve. So some of these examples, again, focusing on priorities of health and education. Thanks a lot.
Specifically, I mean, almost everything has been covered between Len, Mr. Bhandari, and Chandra. I would just like to give a little more detail about the livelihood strategies that we are planned and the way we want to take it forward. Since this is going to be an activity which is a very land-intensive activity, about 10,000 hectares of land would be required for developing this mega solar park. So the idea is to develop some sort of livelihood strategies which are not land-intensive, and which is very difficult once we know maximum people in the rural areas are dependent on agriculture. And here agriculture is not very rich because it's basically an arid area, desert area, and single cropping area. So as it is, agriculture is not very rewarding. Then typically if you look at the skill set which is available with the people, that is also very poor. But specifically with women in the area, they have very rich skills in some sort of artisan work. They are very good in terms of making some traditional handicraft items and making a product which is called Rali, which is a hand-patched quilt. So we have been interacting with Rangasutra to see if they can come out and help us in developing an artisan cluster which will enhance family income at the household level. Then we are trying to look at other activities like a goat cluster, because goat cluster is something where people are, they have the traditional skill set. They have been, keeping small ruminants and they know how to use them. The idea is to give some sort of inputs in terms of breed improvement, so that with the current ongoing practices, how they can earn more, which will again be an addition to their own family income. And the third aspect that we are trying to look at is on skill development, and to see what kind of skill sets could be introduced so that people can get employment within the solar park or outside the solar park, because with this development activity, a lot of traction will be there, and the area may transform in the times to come. So we are trying to focus on those aspects. Thank you.
Any questions if anyone needs to ask anything from Ben or Mr. Bandari or the consultants? Quickly, if you can introduce yourself. Still alive.
I thought it was looks like everything is perfect.
Okay.
On the previous session.
Well, I'd just like to say that, I'll take this opportunity to say we'd be very happy to develop a craft cluster there, which is run by women's power and solar power, in the activities that you talked about.
Thank you.
Yeah. No.
Right, so any questions, or we can just wind up the session? Okay. So it looks like that we can wind up the session. Thank you very much, Mr. Bandari, Anish, Chandra, and